Hello, my name is Ankita and today we will be building a Splitwise clone app without writing a single line of code, all thanks to AI. Now, Splitwise clone is an app that we will be building together that will allow you to split your expenses with your friends. This is not a typical YouTube clone tutorial as we will be giving AI all the prompts to build this app for us. But how exactly will we achieve this? Well, we will be using Galileo AI and Claude AI for building our UI components, and we will be using Cursor AI for everything else. Now, this might feel scary, but don't worry because I will be walking you through each and every step so you can build an app yourself with the power of AI. Under the hood, we will be using Next.js as a UI framework alongside Clerk for authentication, and thanks to Clerk for kindly sponsoring this video. We will also be using NeonDb for databases, ShadCN UI for UI components, and more. And AI is going to learn all these technologies for us so we don't have to. So without further ado, let's get started. Definitely download the cheat sheet linked in the description below. It has all the visuals that I have used in our application, alongside all the links and AI prompts that I have used in this specific tutorial. If you are really interested in following along and learning, then definitely check out the cheat sheet in the description below. So we will be building an app called as Split. Split is a Splitwise clone app. It allows you to split expenses with your friends in seconds. You can invite those friends, add them to groups, and create expenses and split them so you know how much each friend owes. Now, this is a beautiful landing page that we will be building as part of this specific tutorial as well. Or shall I say, we will get AI to build it for us. Then we will also have our value prop for why someone should use Split with three different cards and beautiful icons on top. We will be using Lucid React package for all our icons. Now, you won't be able to access your groups, create a group, add expense, or even when you click on get started, none of that would be accessible because you need to create an account and log in. Now let's go ahead and do that. The minute we click on get started, we have been redirected to our login page. This is our sign up and sign in modal. Now you either just log in using Google, email address or phone number and hit continue, or you could just click on sign up and create a new account. Now there are several ways we could sign in, and this auth layer is completely handled by Clerk, and they take care of all the complexity for us. The users can add email addresses to their account and we can use that for sign in. Then Clerk is going to send them a verification code that they need to just enter to verify their account. Alternatively, you could also use phone number to then sign in as well. Similar to email addresses, a verification code will be sent to your SMS, and then you can re-enter that verification code to log in to the specific app. We are going to go with continue with Google option because I already have an account. But if you don't, please feel free to create an account by going through the sign up process. Let's select my account and hit continue. As we do that, I get redirected to /group page with the ability to create a group. I can view my groups, create a group, add an expense, and so on, which was earlier not accessible because I was not logged in. Let's go ahead and create a new group. Now, the group will be called Halloween Party. Here I'm gonna invite myself. Now let's imagine this is a new member altogether. This is a separate email address I have. The minute I click on invite members, I can hit create a group. A group has been created. Now I can view and manage the details of my group. I can view my balances and expenses. Currently, I don't have any. So we show a nice empty message, an empty state to the user with user-friendly messages. Again, copy is written by AI. Now let's head over to all groups, and you can now see all the different groups we have, the latest group Halloween Party, and also the other groups. Now if I click on Cottage Trip, you can see that Cottage Trip does have some balances and expenses. Now this user Kobe Bean owes us 50%. So that's why the split type is 50%. So 70 divided by 2 is 35. And that's why Kobe Bean owes us $35. Now, if I go back and go to Halloween party. Since we don't have any expenses, let's go and add an expense. Here, let's add an expense of 60 bucks. I am going to add scary and yummy candy that I purchased. Halloween party is a group, and let's divide it by 40/60. Now here, no members are up there because they have not accepted the invite that we sent. So let's do that. This is the invite that I have sent to join the Halloween party organization. But again, I'm gonna accept this invite separately. As I do that, you can see that split members have 2 members now with Kobe Bean as well. Now let's say 40/60, again, scary and yummy candy with 60 bucks. Now, as I hit save expense, we show a nice toast message. And now we are on to the next expense. We can dismiss this message, go to groups, go to Halloween party, and now we see scary and yummy candy with the math already done for us that Kobe Bean owes us 24 bucks. Alrighty. So now we can go back to all groups. And here you can see that I am an admin of specific groups. But for this specific group, Vans Joy Concert, I am a member. If you click on that, you will now see that I have an expense for gas. And again, Kobe Bean owes me $81. If I click on delete, I get a message saying only admins can delete expenses. Since I'm a member, I won't be able to delete any of the expenses. Only admins can. Alternatively, if we add a new expense and add another expense for decor and say 50% with again Kobe Bean and hit save expense. If we go to Halloween party and delete the record, then it's going to ask us, are you sure you want to delete this expense? If I hit OK, then I can delete the record because I am the admin. So we are also going to implement the role-based authentication as well as we just saw in this specific tutorial. We will be implementing all of this in the Split AI tutorial, where we will be getting AI to build all of this functionality for us. I have some good news. I have a Next.js premium course coming up towards the end of the month. I'm planning to launch it. If you are interested and serious about leveling up your Next.js skills, then definitely sign up to the waitlist, as waitlist gets exclusive discounts and massive bonuses as well. This course will be released in early access, so you will get access to half the content towards the end of the month and the later half by the end of the year. Again, if you like any of the videos that I'm creating on my channel and any of the content that I'm sharing with you, then you can only imagine that this course is going to be 10 times better, or even 100 times better, I should say, because I have been spending months and months and months on this course. So I really want to make sure that you get the best education on Next.js through this course. So again, if you're interested, then truly sign up at nextjscourse.dev. Let's quickly take a look at our tech stack and also our AI toolkit that we'll be using in this specific video. So let's say if you were using ChatGPT and Gemini to ask questions, debug problems, work on any creative tasks together, you are using Perplexity to get, let's say, real-time information because it has access to the latest data, then you would be using something like Claude AI or Galileo or V0 to build your UI components. We'll be using Claude and Galileo AI to build our UI components, and you will see in a second. Then you would use Cursor AI or GitHub Copilot to not just build UI components, but also to learn more about your code, to refactor your code, chat with your code, create new components, and so on. So you can do a lot with these two. We will be focusing on Cursor AI because I think it's one of the most powerful developer tools out there. It will truly improve your productivity. So what is Galileo? Well, Galileo is a UI generation platform. It won't be necessarily involved in generating the code for your UI components, but it will be responsible for generating the designs for your screenshots and so on. For instance, you could either use the feature text to UI, where you give Galileo a prompt and it's going to generate the UI, or you could use image to UI, where you give a reference image and Galileo is going to generate a UI for it, for a specific application. You could also use all these different images here as references to build your application further. If you're using Galileo for generating the UI, then you would be using Claude to basically generate React components. Now, Claude is also a AI assistant, and you can literally say, for example, in this case, building a scatter plot to visualize the relationship, and it has built that plot for us. So you can create different drafts, iterate on your designs, and make sure that you're happy with the components that you got. Once you have the React code components for it, then we would switch to using Cursor AI, which is your AI code editor. So let's say you're using WebStorm or Sublime or VS Code, that is Visual Studio Code. You don't need to use any of that in this specific tutorial. You would be using Cursor. Cursor is completely free to download, and I think by far it is one of the best productivity tools out there. So you would be using Cursor for that. Now, like I said, if you're using Galileo AI for generating the UI, generating the designs for our application, we're using Claude to generate React components, then we would be using Cursor to integrate the different services that we would be using in this specific tutorial, such as Clerk, NeonDb, chatting with the database, refactoring our code, and so on. So there is a lot more coming up, and I'm really excited to build with you. Now, we are using Next.js as our full stack framework of choice, and we will be using all the fun stuff in Next.js with the app routers such as React Server components, clients and components, and so on. But again, we're going to tell AI to build all of that. And we are using Clerk as our authentication layer, and Clerk is a comprehensive authentication platform, user management platform. So for our application, all the users and their information, the authentication part of it will be stored on Clerk. And if we take a look at the pricing for Clerk, then on development, they have a pretty generous tier. Now, everything that you get in the Pro plan is available for free in development, which is also pretty awesome. So you can try all the features in development mode. As they say here, all features free to use in development mode. Then we are going to use NeonDb for our database of our choice. It is a serverless platform, and we will be storing all the user information, including groups and expenses for all the users on NeonDb itself. And when you go to the pricing for NeonDB, they have, again, $0 per month, always available free tier, and no credit card required. That is pretty awesome. And we get like 0.5 gigabyte storage as well of data, which is pretty generous as well. So we will be using all of these tools to build this application together, and we will get AI to build it for us. Let's quickly take a look at our tech stack and also our AI toolkit that we'll be using in this specific video. So let's say if you were using ChatGPT and Gemini to ask questions, debug problems, work on any creative tasks together, you are using Perplexity to get, let's say, real-time information because it has access to the latest data, then you would be using something like Claude AI or Galileo or V0 to build your UI components. We'll be using Claude and Galileo AI to build our UI components, and you will see in a second. Then you would use Cursor AI or GitHub Copilot to not just build UI components, but also to learn more about your code, to refactor your code, chat with your code, create new components, and so on. So you can do a lot with these two. We will be focusing on Cursor AI because I think it's one of the most powerful developer tools out there. It will truly improve your productivity. So what is Galileo? Well, Galileo is a UI generation platform. It won't be necessarily involved in generating the code for your UI components, but it will be responsible for generating the designs for your screenshots and so on. For instance, you could either use the feature text to UI, where you give Galileo a prompt and it's going to generate the UI, or you could use image to UI, where you give a reference image and Galileo is going to generate a UI for it for a specific application. You could also use all these different images here as references to build your application further. If you're using Galileo for generating the UI, then you would be using Claude to basically generate React components. Now, Claude is also a AI assistant, and you can literally say, for example, in this case, building a scatter plot to visualize the relationship, and it has built that plot for us. So you can create different drafts, iterate on your designs, and make sure that you're happy with the components that you got. Once you have the React code components for it, then we would switch to using Cursor AI, which is your AI code editor. So let's say you're using WebStorm or Sublime or VS Code, that is Visual Studio Code. you don't need to use any of that in this specific tutorial. You would be using Cursor. Cursor is completely free to download, and I think by far it is one of the best productivity tools out there. So you would be using Cursor for that. Now, like I said, if you're using Galileo AI for generating the UI, generating the designs for our application, we're using Claude to generate React components, then we would be using Cursor to integrate the different services that we would be using in this specific tutorial, such as Clerk, NeonDB, chatting with the database, refactoring our code, and so on. So there is a lot more coming up, and I'm really excited to build with you. Now, we are using Next.js as our full stack framework of choice, and we will be using all the fun stuff in Next.js with the app routers, such as React server components, clients and components, and so on. But again, we're going to tell AI to build all of that. And we are using Clerk as our authentication layer, and Clerk is a comprehensive authentication platform, user management platform. So for our application, all the users and their information, the authentication part of it will be stored on Clerk. And if you take a look at the pricing for Clerk, then on development, they have a pretty generous tier. Now, everything that you get in the Pro plan is available for free in development, which is also pretty awesome. So you can try all the features in development mode. As they say here, all features free to use in development mode. Then we are going to use NeonDB for our database of our choice. It is a serverless platform, and we will be storing all the user information, including groups and expenses for all the users on NeonDB itself. And when you go to the pricing for NeonDB, they have, again, $0 per month, always available free tier, and no credit card required. That is pretty awesome. And we get like 0.5 gigabyte storage as well of data, which is pretty generous as well. So we will be using all of these tools to build this application together, and we will get AI to build it for us. So we will be using Galileo AI for generating all our UI designs and how our app would look like. So for instance, you could use text to UI, or you could use image to UI. When you select text to UI, you would give a specific prompt, and Galileo AI is going to generate the UI for you. When you select image to UI, then Galileo AI is going to check the image that you have uploaded and accordingly generate an UI. Now, on top of this, Galileo AI also has a bunch of prompts that other folks have used and generated their beautiful landing pages, their beautiful pages as well, as you can see over here for this specific user. But there are quite a few screens that we can check out as well and take inspiration from. Now, I have already done the work for us where I have created the specific group and prompts that we can use to generate the landing page design. Because in the free version, Galileo AI and Claude, as well as Cursor, you get a few credits. So you definitely want to be mindful with the prompts that you are using to build your application. So the first prompt we want to give is, I want to build an app called Splitwisely. We are calling it Split, it doesn't matter. Where I can create a group and add our expenses and split the expenses among the number of friends in the group. There is another page where my friends and I can add our expenses, and another page to view all the expenses. Giving context to the AI is extremely crucial. So in this case, we are giving context for what the app is all about. And depending on that, the bot has responded clarifying a few things we need to create. For instance, if you want to design the 3 different screens, then these are the 3 screens we need to create. And I've confirmed that this is correct. These are the screen, in fact, I want to create. And this is the design that Galileo bot has generated for us. One is the expense share. Then we have add an expense screen. And then we have the actual group page as well. So these 3 screens are pretty accurate and looking pretty good for our use case. Now, additionally, on top of that, I said I want to create a beautiful landing page with a title, subtitle, and a call to action, outlining features and make it pretty. And this is where I've asked to create the beautiful landing page that we see over here. Now, I created a really good design for this app Split. It has a nice title and a subtitle, as well as a call to action with some features for why you should use the app. Now, I asked Galileo bot to not use a photo in the banner, but instead use a gradient, but that didn't really work, but that's completely fine. This is where you need to be mindful of the prompts you are giving to the AI. And you can make it more specific and see if it works. But if it doesn't, you can always use Cursor AI to update the gradient later on as well. It's not a big deal. All right, now that we have Galileo AI that has generated all the screens, we can now move this to Claude. It's time for us to use Claude. Now, Galileo AI is used for generating the UI designs. We'll be using Claude to then convert that into React components that we can eventually add to our page. So this is the prompt that you can add for Claude. You can ask Claude, hey, generate this for me. You can also upload an image. So Claude is going to use that as a reference to generate the component. It's actually pretty awesome and pretty cool. Because of limited number of credits, I've done that for us. So we can just use that, for instance. And this is the group for it. And I have given the same prompt that I had over here for Galileo. Again, context is extremely important. On top of this, I've asked, can you create a screen to create a group for expense sharing, referencing the photo attached? Now, referring this photo, I want you to create a screen. And based on that, this is what Claude came up with. Now, that's pretty cool, isn't it? It literally matches to what I'm looking for. But I forgot to mention, hey, can you also use Next.js app router and create the screen? And again, context is extremely important. Yes, we are using React and Next.js uses React, but by being specific, it can take into account the other infrastructure, the other bells and whistles we might need for running Next.js as well. So here, it has given us more information for how we should create this page. We also need to install these dependencies as well. So we need input and button. And if you haven't set up already, it is asking us to use ShadCN UI. Now that's exactly what we would be using for a component library of choice. How we should configure a root layout is also given to us. And towards the bottom, if you want to integrate this form and make it dynamic, it's recommending us to use React hooks or server actions. Exactly what we're looking for. So this code is pretty much done. So let's move on to the next screen. The next screen is add an expense screen. Again, create a screen where friends can add their individual expenses, referencing the screenshot I shared. This line, these few words are very important. Reading the screenshot I shared, otherwise Claude is not going to look at the screenshot. And now, if you take a look, this is the screen that Claude has generated for us by creating a new file. And again, similar description. It's asking us to add input text area and button from ShadCN UI. And then we have, and that's it for that screen. And then we have the dashboard screen or the group page, whatever you want to call it. Create a screen to view all expenses within the group. And then we have this screen. Now, it's pretty nice. We don't need everything in this screen. I could ask Claude to remove it, but that's totally fine. We can move this into a separate page like we have done over here, which is right here, and continue to use the rest of the page. We don't need these different tabs. We can just show all the balances in one place. All right, so now that we have done this, lastly, we are also saying, please use this landing page for page.tsx, which is the root page of our application. And for that, it has created a beautiful landing page starter. Now, we really don't want these images. So what I've done is we have asked, replace the image in the feature card, which is this card. So if you take a look at the code, it has created a feature card component, which it has used for these three spots. For why you split, it has used a feature card for that. As I said, please use Lucid React icons instead and replace the image. Now, Lucid React icons are these icons. It's a pretty good package. The fact that you install ShadCN UI means that you already have installed Lucid React as well. And it's pretty good. So I want it to replace it with the closest matching description-wise icon as well. So it has replaced that. And if you take a look at this one, you can see these are the icons that it has used from Lucid React, which is pretty awesome and pretty cool because it understood exactly what I'm saying. Now I don't need dark mode. I only want light mode for our app, but feel free to use whatever you want and update these prompts and create a design that you really like. Now it's time to finally integrate Cursor AI. The Cursor AI is the AI code editor. You can just click on this button to download it for free and then launch it. So for instance, I could just go to applications here and look for cursor after downloading it, and then right click and open it, for instance. Feel free to grab it and use it. All right, so now that I have cursor set up, let's head over to the Next.js documentation. Now we will be using Next.js as our full stack framework of choice. So we need to set up the framework. So let's just go ahead and install it. Let's just go to the terminal and paste this. Let's call our app Split AI app, and let's just select all the defaults. Now we are going to use TypeScript. We need ESLint. We will be using TailwindCSS, which is a CSS framework which will allow us to write Tailwind code. It will allow us to use a bunch of functions that Tailwind already has. If you don't know what TailwindCSS is, I have a crash course on my channel, so definitely check that out. We are going to use the app router, and we're just going to go with all the defaults here to set up our Next.js project. Now this is going to install the dependencies as well as the dev dependencies in our code. And as it does that, let's just change our directory to Split AI app. There you go. Now here, let's also go ahead and install ShadCN UI as well. Now if you go to ShadCN documentation, which is right here, you could just head over to installation and go to Next.js and then copy this command and paste it in your terminal. This is going to install ShadCN. Again, we're going to go with all the defaults here. It's going to use Tailwind config file itself and update our configuration. Now let's open up this project inside of our cursor editor. So for example, here I'm going to type cursor dot. Now you will not have this command from the get-go, and you definitely have to open this project up by opening cursor app manually. But in order for you to install it, I'll show you how you can do it. And there you go. We have our Split AI cursor app ready to go. Now, if we expand this and make it full screen, and let's zoom in a little. Now, this looks like VS Code because it is. Cursor has forked VS Code, that is Visual Studio Code, and added more AI capabilities on top. So right now we have done a few things. We have a Next.js app. So we have the app folder where all our pages are going to exist. We have the page.tsx file, which is going to be the root page. And anytime we want to create a new route that we want to expose to the browser, then we will create a file called as page.tsx. If you want to wrap your entire application, then you would use the layout.tsx file. And then we have the Tailwind config file, which is a global configuration file for Tailwind. Similarly, this is where our CSS global code exists as well, which is the globals.css file. Now we have a lib directory that is created by ShadCN. Again, this is a simple utils that allows you to combine a bunch of CSS class names. We'll take a look at that later. We don't need to worry about it now because ShadCN uses that internally. And ShadCN has also created components.json, which gives it a description for where all the files are located inside our project. So now that we have done this, let's start our server by running npm run dev. As we do that, let's just go to localhost 3000, and there you go. We have our Next.js app ready to go. Now, before we proceed, I want to give you a quick walkthrough of the Cursor AI. Now, the Cursor AI is an editor. It's built on top of Visual Studio Code. So Cursor AI has literally just forked VS Code and added AI capabilities to it. You're going to feel right at home if you have used Visual Studio Code in the past. Now, towards the top right, you want to click on Toggle AI pane. This is going to open up the chat window where you can chat with Cursor AI. You can ask Cursor any questions you want about your project, about this project that we have set up. For instance, all you need to do is add context so that Cursor knows what we're talking about, and then ask anything you like. Now, if you want to know more about components.json file, you can just ask that and then select any of the files that you're looking for. If you open up page and let's say you want to remove everything in this specific file, there are two ways you can do this. You could ask Cursor, hey, add context, select page file, and you can just ask Cursor, remove everything in this file and just keep hello world text. As you do that, it has generated the code for you. which has only the text hello world in here. Now you have three options: ask, copy, or apply. If you click on ask, this means you need to clarify something and cursor did not necessarily do exactly what you wanted to. If you click on copy, then you can copy this code and manually replace the entire code, which in some cases you may want to do. But if you hit apply, cursor is just going to take over and do it for you, which is the option we are going to select now. Let's hit apply. Now we have two options. Do we like this change? For instance, green is what cursor has added and red is what cursor has removed. If I say accept, then it will be applied. But if I say reject and if it's not correct, then you can just reject it and ask Cursor AI for further clarification and give it more context so that it can do exactly what you want it to. In this case, it's pretty straightforward. So if you're just going to hit accept, and we have hello world text right here. The second way you could chat with cursor is by selecting any text. You can either add to chat. So again, the context has been added to chat for this specific line, or you could just hit edit or Command K as a shortcut and ask any question. So for example, if I ask any question, for example, I say hi, it is going to probably replace it with hi, or for now it's not really clear what I really wanted to do. So I can say up text to hi, and now it has updated the text to hi, which I can just accept. So that's another way you can chat with Cursor AI. Now there's more you can do with Cursor AI that we will keep learning as we build our application further. Let's build our landing page now. Let's head over to the landing page code, which is in Claude AI. And now let's head over to the code tab and you can see all the code that it has generated. Now let's just copy the contents by clicking on this button and head over to cursor and just replace it and save it. Now clearly we do not have button over here because we have not installed any buttons from ShadCN. Now, as you remember, it asked us to install button from ShadCN UI. So what we're going to do is literally just go to button, or you can see over here, anytime you want to add a component called button, you can just copy it and then stop the server and paste it. I'm also going to adjust my windows so that this is all the way to the left. So now button has been added. Let's restart the server and let's head over to our browser. Refresh the page and there you go. Our landing page is ready to go. But obviously it doesn't look like how we want it to. The first thing we're going to do is refactor our code a little. As you can see, it has added comments for navigation, for hero section. And then we also have the feature section with feature card, and all of them belong in the same file. We don't want that. It's gonna get cluttered as our application grows. So for that, we're gonna use a really cool Cursor AI feature called as Cursor Composer. If you press Command-Shift-I, this is going to open up a composer. A composer will allow you to compose a bunch of files together and not just perform an operation on one single file, but you could do a lot more with it. But you can select all the files if you want as well. So for instance, we are going to select the homepage file that we just created. And here we are going to give it the prompt saying, refactor the page and move hero section into a banner component. And we have feature card in feature card. Then we have navigation and into a components folder located in the root of the application. So now it has basically started to create the banner component, but notice that it has not done it right. It has added a new folder called as components. So we want to say, we don't want to accept this. We just want to correct it. Don't add a new folder components. Use the existing folder located outside the app folder. And now you can see it has used the components folder that already exists and not the previous one. So now if you take a look at page which is generating right now, you can already see that it has refactored all of that. So if you like the change, we can just accept it. And now if we go back, we have two components here. We don't want that, so let's delete it. But here in the home page, now we have all these components. Now, as you can see clearly, if we go to navigation, now if we save it, we just have to make changes in the file to save it because it doesn't really understand yet that things have moved here. But now clearly this is incorrect. So if you go to feature card, this can be this type, which again cursor just generated that for us, and now the error is gone. So now if we go back to the app and refresh the page, you can see that the icons and the refactor is working. Now if we go back to the composer, if you take a look at banner, and we can select banner as the file, say banner, we can just say remove background image and use bg gradient, bg purple 600 to purple 400 to bg pink 600 instead. So now you can see background has been updated and now it's generating it, and I can just accept this specific change itself. If I close it, the gradient has been applied. If I go back, then you can see there is a banner. Now, there is some sort of an overlay here, which is this BG gray. So we can again say remove the overlay BG gray 900. We don't need that overlay at all. So now if we go here, we can just accept this. Go back to the app, then now it's looking pretty good. There's some weird margin on top, which again we can remove it. Remove margin 8 from banner. We don't need any of that. It's generating it again. Again, as we see changes, we can just accept it. Again, accept, go back, see, now there is no margin here. Now again, we can say banner, change the size of H1 and P and get started to be responsive. That is, on desktop, make it text X7XL, medium device text 6XL, and small to be text 4XL. But this is only true. So if you take a look at banner, now you can see it has automatically applied all of those values. So we can just hit accept again. If I go back, now you can already see that it's looking pretty good. Lastly, center the banner elements. Accept, go back. It has already been centered as well. Add a padding of P8 to button. Again, now that padding has been added, so we can accept it as well. So now you can see our banner is looking pretty good already. Now we can just change the overall theme of our application. Now in order for us to do that, we're going to start a brand new composer. Now remove any of the files, and this is where we are going to use the @ symbol that's very useful in Cursor AI. If we use @ we can do @codebase, and this is going to refer all the files in the codebase. And we want to say change the theme of the application from dark mode to light mode, and use BG purple 600 as the button colors. Make the text maybe text gray 900, and update the navigation background to be I don't know, maybe BG gray 400. We're just asking it to just go through the entire application and update all the changes. This way we don't have to worry too much about it. So now it's literally just generating it. And as it does that, you can just see the diff view for it. So this dark mode is now false. Global CSS diff view is it's BG background and text is gray 900. And in button, you can also see. So it has also updated the ShadCN button as well. So we can hit accept all. And if I go back, you can see that the application is looking pretty good. Obviously, the navigation background is not looking that good. So maybe we can say tweak nav background color to be BG gray 100 maybe. So it's automatically just gonna do that. For instance, it has automatically tweaked that for us. So we can just hit accept. And now that we go back, our application is looking so much better. It has not updated the feature card, so let's just ask it to do that. Also update the feature cards to be light mode. And hopefully now that we have given enough context, that is just gonna know what to do. So now if I hit accept and go back, look at that. Our application is looking so much better already. Now lastly, we can also say center text of feature cards and also add a width of max W7XL. So now it is also just going to add it. So we can hit accept here, and then we can also just hit accept here. So now you can see that our code is looking pretty good. We have this background color which is different, so you can see here it has taken BG background. So now we can just change the background color as well of the page, and here we can say remove the background color of the page, and it's automatically just going to figure it out. So you can see how we are chatting with the application, so it's accordingly making the changes for us, so we don't have to worry too much about it. And you can see that the changes have automatic. So now if I reapply and hit accept, if I reapply and then if I hit accept, now if we go back, the background color has changed. Lastly, let's just tweak the font of our application because that's the only thing pending. We can just go to layout, and here we can just select it and say use font Montserrat from Next font. And now it got rid of everything. You can say don't use local fonts. And now you can see Montserrat has been added. But again, it did not really add everything. So now if I enter, you can see that it has generated the code for us. If I hit tab, again, that autocomplete feature is pretty good. So now everything is working as expected. So now even if we get rid of this and add class name here, you can see that the font has been updated, which is exactly what we are looking for. So our application is the design of our application is looking pretty good. Lastly, let's just add padding between the elements. So add padding, and now we can hit accept and we can go back. Now you can see that there is a bit more padding. It's now time to integrate Clerk, which is our authentication layer for our application. So if we quickly take a look at this diagram, this is how it's gonna work. Now, whenever a user logs into the app is when they see this specific modal, and this is in fact hosted by Clerk itself. We can sign out and then sign back in as we like. So as we do that, and again, log in using Google or any of the methods that we have enabled, then we can just check out the application, get access to it. So Clerk is going to be responsible for that. Now, Clerk is your one-stop shop for a user management platform, and it has a bunch of embeddable UIs that you could use to authenticate and manage your users. For instance, if you sign in, and let's say I'm going to sign in with Google, I have a bunch of applications on Clerk. So if I select this one and go to organizations, this is where all the groups are created. But we'll come back to that. If we click on configure, we can basically configure how we want that specific Clerk modal to show up. So now we have enabled email addresses to the account, but then we can also add phone numbers as well. Now keep this in mind. This is a development instance and all the pro features are completely free for development. So since for this specific video, we are mainly using it to learn all the different AI capabilities, I'm going to turn phone number on as well. We could also sign in with Passkeys. We could select email verification key, and this way users can just sign in with an email verification link, which are also known as magic links, where a link will be sent to your app, to your email. You can click on it and verify as well. We can sign in using SMS verification code as well. At the same time, users can set their first name and last name in the application. We can also allow them to delete their accounts as well. Now, this is just all of these configurations are just a toggle away, which is really cool because auth can be really complex. Now, if you go to social connections, we are also going to enable Google, but you could enable all of these different OAuth providers as you please, as you like in your application. Now, the thing I want to highlight here is organization. Now, if you don't have it enabled, which you might not, you need to enable it. Now, organizations is what we would use to manage all the different roles in the specific application. Now, if you think about it, if you go to the app that we are building, anyone can create a group, but the minute that they create a group, they become the admin of that group. Then the members that we end up inviting here will become the members of that group, and they won't be admins. Now, admins might be responsible for deleting the group or deleting any specific expenses as well, which members cannot do because they have just joined the group to add their expenses. So that's exactly what they would be responsible for. So we'll definitely be adding role-based authentication in this specific tutorial as well. So for that, we are going to use organizations. Now, you can think of organizations as groups as well. So whenever we create a new organization, that means we are going to create a new group. So for example, Kobe's concert, Megan Trainor concert, cottage trip, Vans Joy concert, all of these are different groups, aka organization in Clerk. If you click on any of these concerts, then you can invite additional members as well, and they become the members with the role of member. Else, you're going to have a role of admin. Whoever creates the group will have the admin role by default. So that's exactly what we will be configuring and building with this specific application and implementing role-based auth as well. Now we can set the member limit to whatever we like. Right now it's 5, but we can also allow organization admins to delete this org as well. Now, if we go to settings, we can set whatever roles we want. So if we click on roles, right now we have the admin role and the member role. So admin role will have the key org admin versus member will have the key org member. But you could add additional roles in your application as you please if you need it. In our case, these 2 roles are sufficient. And then you can then give additional permissions to manage members, read members, and so on for the admins and the members as well. Now, I think this is a pretty good start for our split application, wherein anyone who creates a group will become the admin automatically, will be given the role, but then everyone else who are creating the expense are going to get member roles. And to wrap up, we are also going to have users which will be storing in Clerk as well. We won't be storing any users in the database. For instance, if I go to users, and these are the users that I have in my app, and anytime anyone logs in to Clerk, we will be storing the users in Clerk itself. We won't be storing in the database. But then any type of expenses that we add for specific groups, we will be storing that in a database, but more on that later. All right, so now let's go ahead and create a brand new application. Let's click on create app, and this app, we can call it Split AI app, for instance. Let's just call this Split AI. Now we're going to enable phone number, so you can see phone number has popped up here. Then we have username. If you want username to be there, we're definitely going to enable Google login. Then we can enable any of these additional OAuth logins as we like. But this is a pretty good start. We have phone number, email, and Google. So let's go ahead and create this application. Now, like they say, we are just a couple of steps away. Now, in order for us to set up Clerk and use it in our Next.js application, we need to do the following things. We are not going to build this. We're going to get AI to build this for us. So let's just continue to the Next.js guide. And now we are just going to copy this link that we got, and let's head over to Cursor. Now let's close all of these files. And again, let's head to the composer. Let's create a brand new composer here. Now we're going to ask Cursor to learn the Clerk docs and add the sign in and sign up functionality in our application. So let's ask that. And the way we could do that is by using the @ symbol and going to docs. Now docs is where you can add a link, and Clerk is then going to reference that specific doc link to understand what the docs say and then accordingly implement the functionality. Now I have added a few docs here, but I'm just going to add a new one together. So let's add that. And here we're going to say Clerk docs for Next.js. Hit confirm. Now we're going to say referencing the Clerk docs, create the sign in and sign up functionality, update navigation bar to include the Clerk user button. Made a typo there, so Clerk user button. Now let's see what it does. Now it's going to literally refer all of these links that we just saw, and now it's going to create the sign in and sign up routes for us. So as you can see, if you go to page.tsx, it has created this route for sign up this navigation. It has updated it completely, and we don't really want it to replace everything here, so we'll update that. And then it has added a middleware file. Now a middleware file is sort of like a middle person, but whenever you're trying to route anywhere in a Next.js application. And this is where Clerk has added their own middleware so that they can protect the routes, and you won't be able to create a group unless you're logged in. So you can protect specific routes as well. So before we update anything, as you can see, we have not installed the package for Clerk Next.js. So now if we take a look at step 1, we are creating the sign in and sign up pages. We are updating the environment variables. We are updating middlewares. We are creating the following files, updating the variables. So we need this, updating the navigation bar to include Clerk user button, and that's it. So this is all of this is going to be done for us. But first, let's go to the dashboard and install this. Let's go to the dashboard and install Clerk. So now let's paste this and let's run dev. The other thing we are going to need are these two environment variables, which is not something that AI would have access to. So we definitely need to create it. And we can say use these values for m.local file. And I don't think it has added that, so we'll have to create the file maybe. Okay, so it has added it over here, but we already have the file, so we can definitely copy that for sure. But if you take a look at all these pages, it has created the routes. Now let's just look at navigation. If you take a look, we have the diff for it, so it has added that. And existing navigation items are here. So we're gonna say don't remove any navigation barcode, but add user button to it. So you can see that that's the case. Now if we hit accept, close the app, you can close all of this. And now you can see we have a sign in folder with a Clerk sign in component, sign up with a Clerk sign up component. If we go to layout, we have not necessarily wrapped the Clerk provider, but we can do that. And if you go to components, let's go to navigation, and it did not work as expected. So let's just go back and say keep the existing navigation bar code. And here let's just add navigation as context. So it's clearly not. So this is where we are going to just copy this, and let's Command Z and reject the changes because this does not work as expected. But here let's just add user button and import it from Clerk Next.js, which is the code that AI gave us. Alrighty. So now the last step is to add the Clerk provider, and there was no information here in this specific documentation to do it. But if we head over to the Getting Started Next.js guide, it has information here. So let's just reference this now. So let's just open up the composer and say referencing again docs, add a new doc for Next.js Clerk install. And we're going to say follow the document and apply the changes to integrate. Again, these steps were necessary so that we are able to integrate Clerk all together. And as you can see, it is now actually telling us exactly what we need to do. It has added the Clerk provider, so we can accept that change. But on top of that, it has also just added the rest of the code as well. And now you can see navigation is as is over here as well. So now this is working as expected. So that specific document was truly missing. And I intentionally did not include it initially because I wanted to show you how AI prompting works and how context is so important here as well. So let's just go to accept all. Now, if we go to navigation, we do have the user button. But if we go to layout, then we also have a Clerk provider here, which is exactly what we want. And layout is recommending that we add navigation here. So let's do that. And then if we press tab here, it's going to autocomplete navigation here for us too. Navigation is the default import. So if we fix with AI, it has fixed the default import here. Perfect. And now if we go to page, we can get rid of this completely. For instance, we don't need navigation here, and remove this comment as well. Perfect. And remove this as well. Again, all I'm doing is pressing tab so that AI kicks in to remove all the stuff. All right, so now that we have this, if we go to our application and let's refresh the page, we forgot to add the keys, the environment file. So let's just do that. So here, let's just create a new file called n.local, and Composer had already given us the files that we needed. So if we select the Composer here and go scroll up, let's just go here and paste it. Alrighty. So now if we go refresh the page, so now you can see that it has redirected us to the sign in page because clearly we don't have an account. So if we go to sign up, this is where I'm just going to go with continue with Google. And now you can see that I have been redirected to the home page, and my user button is also right here, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So I could just sign out from here. And if I go to home page, I get redirected to the sign in page. So our sign up and sign in process has worked really well, and all thanks to AI. All we had to do was to send 2 documents, and then everything else just worked. Now let's implement create a group functionality. Now, in order for us to create a group, we need to essentially create an organization in Clerk. And that's what we had talked about earlier. So let's take a look at Clerk organizations and how they work. Now, they allow you to manage users and their access to resources within your Clerk app. So they are a perfect example for using it for role-based auth that we talked about. So in order for you to enable organizations, we need to go to our dashboard and go to organization settings and make sure that we enable it. Now, once we do that, then we can just go ahead with the default roles that Clerk has created, which is admin and member. Now, next, we could just feed in this documentation or wherever the code for it is so that Cursor AI can learn how to create organizations. So what we essentially want to do is, use the screenshot from Claude AI, which is create a group. We can just grab this specific code, which is this one specifically, and then let's connect it with Clerk to create the organization. So first things first, let's just copy this, and we want to create it. We can close this one. We want to create it on /group. So let's just go there. And now let's create a new folder called group and so on. But again, we're going to get AI to do it. So let's just go to the composer, create a new composer. And here we're going to say referencing the below code, create a /group page. And we have just given it the entire group page that we got from Claude AI. Alrighty, so now let's accept all. And if we see, we don't have input here. So we definitely need to grab input from ShadCN UI. So if we go back, let's stop the app. And now let's add input here. There you go. Let's restart the server. And now input code is already added here as a UI. And if we go to group page, that has also been created. So now if we go back to localhost 3000, again, let's just sign in. And now that we have signed in, we can see create a group link. And this is literally the screenshot, the UI that we had. Now, what we want is when you click on invite members is when we want to invite the members. So we are tweaking a bit here. So we want a form for invite members, and we don't need, you can add 100 members text here, but we can keep it. So now what we can do is we can tell Cursor to build this functionality further. So now if we go back to the page, here we can start giving it more context to tell exactly what we are looking for. So we can say tweak the invite members button to add a form with text input and a button next to it for inviting the members. Remove the group avatar, and let's see what happens. So now they're going to just remove all the members, and let's accept. Now if we go back, let's import chevron right. That has not been imported here. So let's just import that, and same thing, import Lucid React. And now you can see invite members functionality has been added. There is an error, but we can fix that. There are almost like two forms here, so we can just get rid of one. We have group avatar, we don't need it. We don't need this text either, and we don't need this button and this text. All right, so now we have a invite button, and it gave an error here, but now we have a group name, an invite member, and so on. So now we can just tell that, hey, there's this error that form cannot be a descendant of form. So we have two forms here. So here, let's just toggle the AI pane and select the group page and say remove one form and only keep one. All right, so now we can just apply this code, and soon we will see an accept option. It's generating. Let's accept that. Now if we go back, that error, the hydration error, is gone. Plus we also have a create a group function form as well. So now if we compare the create a group form here and here, it looks slightly different. So now if you notice that the form has gone back to its original state. So let's take a look at layout. And I believe what happened was when we accepted the font, then when we added Clerk provided, the font was gone. So in this case, we can just say add the Montserrat font. And now you can see we can just tweak it to Montserrat, which is gonna add Montserrat here. So we can just accept that. Now if we go back, you can see that now it's looking a lot better, just like what we had. We can also delete a bunch of these links from navigation, so we don't need it. We can literally just delete, in fact, all of this code. Perfect. And we can create a group here. There you go. So now we can also just align it better. So we can say align the links vertically. All right. So now let's see what happens. Hit accept. And now if we go back, the alignment is a lot better, for instance. Let's now connect this form with create an organization as well. Now I find that with AI, when you give one instruction at a time and verify the functionality, it works way better than just feeding a bunch of prompts that doesn't really work. So first we're going to create the organization, and then we're going to connect it to the database. So first things first, let's copy the document link, because we are going to feed that to Cursor AI so that it can learn. Open the composer, create a new composer, and here let's again go to docs, add a new doc, and paste the link. You're going to say Clerk organizations docs, hit confirm. And now we can say referencing, and we also should select the file itself for creating the group. So referencing the Clerk organizations doc, create a group. All right, we should say create an organization that is a group and add members to it as well. And then hit enter. And now it's going to update the group component to basically just create the group and also to basically just create the organization and then invite the members. So let's take a look at the code that it has generated. Now, as you can see, it's already getting the hooks from Clerk Next.js package that we already have. And then it's using React Hot Toast. Now, here's the thing. In ShadCN UI, we already have a toast component. So we don't need to add that. So we can just say use ShadCN UI toast component instead of adding a new package. And now hopefully it's going to update that context. And there you go. Instead of you adding a new package, it's just going to create use toast. And now as you can see, it's already adding the toast as well, just right here, the toast component itself. So what we're going to do first is go to the command line and add toast here. Toast already exists. Toaster, I'm just going to override it. There you go. And let's take a look at the rest of the code. Now we have group name, we have create organization. There is some error here, so we have to fix that. So we can fix that in chat later. And then we have handle create group functionality if there is no user, and implement invite functionality. Now, this is something we need to look into next. We have the invite member already over here. And then we are submitting we are basically notifying the user that the group has been successfully created. Now we could update it. Now here's what's happening here. We are creating the group name and invited members, and we are storing it in state. We're using the Clerk hooks to create the organization and access the user itself. And after that, we are creating the group. Now, if there is no user, that means that the user has not logged in. So we definitely need to check that. And then if there's no user, we are throwing an error here and we are sending a toast message. We're creating the organization and we're inviting the members based on what we have added to set invited members. There you go. So now we can just accept this. There are some errors. We can just accept all. Now there are some errors, but let's see how we can tweak it. Whoops. So let's just go back, and it also added we're just gonna overwrite it. And if you take a look at toast, if you remove the input here and get toast, then that comes from the hook for toast. And if we take a look here, this is just complaining about a button, unused button. So we can keep it as is. And now if we take a look again, same thing, the hook for toast. And now this is complaining that create organization does not exist on use organization. So let's try to fix it in chat and see what's up. We also have, so if you saw when I pressed tab there, then organization list also came up. So that's where create organization needs to come from. And again, pressing tab, that import has been fixed. And now we're just gonna highlight this whole thing and ask cursor to fix it, fix the errors. And now you can see that it has fixed our errors, majority of them. So if there is no organization, it's gonna throw an error and then create the organization here and then invite the member. And the role is going to be member. However, if you remember on the Clerk dashboard, the role was in fact org member and not just member. So we need to add that here. At this point, it's trying to open up the organization profile, which is a feature that we don't really want, so we can get rid of it. Alrighty, we can remove this and remove the code that we don't need. And now let's just test it out. So now if we go back to the app and refresh the page, so now let's just make sure that the functionality works. We're gonna call this cottage trip, give it this email address. Now you can see that the invited members is this email address. We can add an additional one. And now when we create it, you can see this toast message, group successfully created. So now if we go to and Clerk and refresh it, you can see that the cottage strip did get created, and there's only one member right now. But if I were to check my other email address, then you can see right here that I have received an invitation to join cottage strip for the Split AI app. Now I'm gonna accept this in another incognito window, and you can see that right here. I can accept this and then set the password and hit continue. Now, because we haven't deployed this application, there's nothing there. That's why we see this. But if I go back to the app, refresh the page and go to members, now we see that there are two, in fact, members. So not just creating the organization, but also inviting members functionality is also working. It was all implemented with Cursor AI. Now that we have created the group, let's make a few tweaks and refactor our code further, because we have done a lot here. So now that we have invite members, but the form doesn't clear after the group has been created. In fact, we should probably get redirected to that group. So we can create some sort of a route for that. For instance, in our application, we have these groups, this groups page. So we can go ahead and create that if we like. I accidentally just pressed the button for creating another group. So if you go back to our organizations, now there are two cottage strips instead of one. So we can just delete this one because we don't need it. And that is another reason why we should clean up. So that's the instruction we are going to give to Cursor AI. So going back to our composer, we're going to tell Cursor AI, and we don't want this to be the toast, but the page itself. We are going to say redirect the user to /group/dynamic, I would say ID, where ID would be the organization group ID, and clean up the form. So now this is going to redirect the user and clean up the form as well. So you can see the rest of the code remains the same, but now router.push has been added with router coming from Next navigation itself. So, and now this is the diff view for it. So we have routed, there's a loading state, and so on. Now, if there's a loading state, then it's creating, otherwise it's create group. So this works as expected. Let's just hit accept. And now when we go back, let's just refresh it one more time. And now if I create, I don't know, like a wine trip, and invite the same user, create the group, you can see create group was created, and I got redirected to /group/the org ID. Now keep this in mind that this route does not exist. So for now, what we can do is we can just create an empty page there. So we can say create a new route /group/organization ID. So we can say create a new route page and just print the name of the page, name of the organization. And let's see what happens with that. Now we have a group page where ID has been retrieved and the name also has been retrieved, and let's just hit accept. Now the minute we do that, we have ID page here, and if everything works as expected, then we can just see that organization in fact is not found. So we need to see why that is. So right now it's just using the use organization hook and then printing the organization ID itself. It's not actually comparing the IDs per se. So we need to tweak that code, and we need to say get the maybe get a list of organizations and compare if the ID match to the params ID. And now you can see that it is doing some sort of there's some logic here to check if the ID matches. Now we have a list of organizations here that doesn't exist. So let's just try to resolve it and hit apply. So now let's just take a look at the docs and give the Cursor AI more information, because clearly there's something missing. So now if we take a look at organization clerk and go to organizations, let's go to use organization lists and then copy this doc and add it. So now again, going back to the composer, add docs, add new doc. We can say organization list and then refer the doc to get the list of organizations and check if the params match, because clearly there is some sort of missing knowledge that the AI has, so we need to fill the gap, and which is why we need to feed the document that we just did. Now hit save, and if we go back to the code, now you can see that the organization ID has in fact been retrieved, but let's just see if the name has been printed or not. So now also print the name of the organization, because that got removed. And now you can see the organization name has been printed if I hit save. Now the other thing you need to remember is with use organization list, there was a field called user memberships, which also needed to be enabled here in order to retrieve that from the hook. And then once it got the memberships, then it was able to check if the organization ID matched or not. So that was very important for us. So now if we refresh the page, now you can see the group is in fact called Wine Trip, which is exactly what we're looking for. So as you can see how when we felt like there was some information missing for the AI, we were just able to retrieve the docs, pass it to Cursor AI to say, hey, this is what you need. This is the missing piece. And then Cursor AI was able to quickly catch up to the latest documentation, which is pretty awesome. So now let's focus on adding an expense page. We have the amount, we have description, we have the list of groups that specific user belongs. We have split percentage, and also who do we want to split with that in that specific group. So let's build this page. Now, if you remember, we already had provided Claude with a add an expense page right here, but this add an expense page slightly looks different. So how about we just start a new chat, upload the screenshot for adding an expense page, and give it a brand new prompt. So let's do this together. So using the Next.js app router, create the component. This app is, and we're gonna give it the same prompt as this one. I want to build an app, create the add an expense page. Let's see what happens. Now it is going to simply look at this specific component and replicate that. Now it's generating the entire page itself, and you can see the different form inputs that we potentially need from the ShadCN UI library. It says creating a new file here, then copy the component and make sure you have the necessary UI components. So in terms of the UI components, we definitely need select, input, label, and button. So let's just head over to our terminal and install them first. So here, let's just stop the server, and we are going to install select, input, button, and label. We already have button, so let's just add label and card. Input already exists. Sure, let's override it. Perfect. Now let's start the development server again. And we are going to now just copy the contents for this. And remember that we want this specific page at the /expense page. So let's just head over to the app, to our cursor editor, open up Composer, and let's ask Cursor AI to create an expense page at /expense and use the following page code. Now it is going to generate all of this for us. Additionally, it has also added the add an expense link onto the navigation. So if you take a look at the diff view, it got rid of everything from navigation. We don't want that. Keep the existing code in navigation and simply add an additional link for add expense. It's gonna revert this change, and there we go. We have add an expense
page here. So we're going to accept this one. And if we take a look at the page, we're also going to accept this one too. So now if we're going to accept this one and let's head back, we have add an expense link here. And then we also have the page here as well. Now it has manually added a few things. So let's just fix this with AI to accept. And then we are going to fix AI in chat as well. Again, just to make sure everything works as expected. Is not assignable. So let's fix that in chat as well and hit apply. Remove this last. And lastly, we have to type this as well. So let's just fix it with AI. Now, when I clicked on infer, it gave a completely different type, which is not what we want. So let's just accept this one. There we go. So now when we go back to our app and we have add an expense page here in the nav, and this needs to be marked as use client. So let's just copy this thing, hand it over to cursor and say, fix the error. I get an error, just this for expense page. And now we can just hit apply and accept. So it added the use client directive. All right. So now you can see if we go back to add an expense, then add an expense did get added, but we don't necessarily want this to be a card. So what we're going to do is we're going to tell cursor, go back to composer and tell cursor, remove the card component from this page. Because we don't need the card component specifically. We just want the page to be there as is. There we go. Let's hit accept. Go back here. And if we go back, you can see that add an expense page did get created. Now we can also say give it similar, or go back to the composer, give the page, and let's select the file, page similar spacing as files page, or we should just select the group page, just so that it has similar spacing around it, around the application. All right, so now it has generated the code and it's gonna apply, and we're gonna hit accept, go back, and now it's looking so much better. We have create a group and we also have add an expense, which is very similar looking. So now that we have this, and again, it has hard-coded Kobe's concert and member 1 and member 2, but now we want to replace this with Clerk. So let's do that now. So now we need to connect this data to Clerk organizations. We need to pull the groups from Clerk because organizations are in fact groups. And then we also need to pull the members that belong to that specific organization to that specific group. So we need to tell Cursor AI that information. In order for us to do that, let's head over to the documentation of Clerk. Now we have three things we need to feed Cursor AI. We need to give it this specific page, organization roles and memberships, and also organizations. Give it as much information as possible to figure out how it can pull the latest organizations and also pull the members that belong to that specific group. So let's do that now. All right, so now we are going to, again, go to the composer. We can keep this existing composer itself. And here we are going to say refer docs. Let's create a new doc. Go here and paste it. You can say Clerk organizations, hit confirm. Let's create another doc, and this one is memberships. So we can say paste this, Clerk memberships. Then we have one more doc, which is this one related to members. So we can say add a new doc, paste it, Clerk users. And what we want to say is refer these three documents and retrieve the list of organizations for the specific logged in user, just like, or I guess we don't have to say that, for the specific logged in user, and also fetch the members that belong to that specific organization. Update the drop downs accordingly. Now let's see what happens. So it's going to refer to all the documentation here, and then it's going to update the UI for it. So now it's generating the code for it. if you can see, it is looking at organization list and organization. So it is first trying to get the memberships, set the members, and then if you take a look at the bottom, it is also just getting it as well, for instance. And I'm gonna say don't use any type, properly type everything. Because we really don't want to keep fixing individual any's. We want Clerk to just type it so that it's very easy for us to read as well. So for instance, instead of adding any, the fact that now it added an organization and member, it's so much easier for us to see what all of these values are. Perfect. Now, user is declared, but its value is never read. User is assigned a value, but never used. Then we have the organization list, and let's fix it. So organization list does not exist. So let's copy this and say, fix this error. So now it's using user memberships, which is exactly what we're looking for here. And rest of the component stays the same. We don't have to accept navigation. Let's just focus on page. And user is declared, but its value is never read. So let's copy that and also paste that in here as well. Again, instead of trying to move to the editor in the composer itself, we want to give as much guidance as possible as well. All right, so now it is also using those values. Let's see now. If you take a look, we have this as an error. So let's just copy this and paste it. Fix the error. And it's due to the mismatch in the expected type of get memberships. All right, so let's see. Now we can fix this later, and this one is not read. So let's just accept it for now. And now when we go back, this value is never read. So we can just remove those. And now we just need to type the error itself. So let's just fix it with AI. Okay, that's not what we want. What we want is this, adding the type of it. So instead of saying fix with these fix, just say reject. Create a type for error. Don't use any. All right, we can go with that for now. So now if we go back to the app and refresh the page, we don't have any groups being fetched nor member. Now it's pretty clear that none of the organization memberships are being shown here. So we're going to give Cursor AI one more documentation. We are going to give the API docs for use organization list parameters because something is missing here. Now, after going through the docs myself, I realized that there's a property that we need to add, but I want to train the AI and I want to show you how prompting can help you debug the problems together. So we can say refer, and let's add a new doc and say Clerk org params and display the user memberships, because right now no memberships are being shown. So now it's reading the documentation, and if we take a look, now there we go. This is what we're looking for. We wanted the user memberships to be true. In fact, let's just accept this. So now if we go back to the app, and you can see that the groups are selected, and if you take a look at the group, then you can see that the groups are in fact being selected. Even though the groups are being selected, but the members are not. So let's give it more instructions here. So we want to say fetch the members based on the organizations drop down and display them in the drop down. Once drop down for organization changes, refetch the members. So now it's modifying it, and hopefully now it understands how it works. If not, we'd have to feed it more documentation. So now it's trying to find the org ID, and then based on that, it's going to set the member list. This is a suggested code. So right now what it's doing is we have all these values in our state. It has these user memberships. It's retrieving the user membership from organization list. It is then trying to load everything. Let's hit accept, go back. Now, if we select a group, then the member does get selected. If I go back to the next group, then again, there are two members now in cottage trip. Kobe Bean and Ankita Kulkarni. But if you see, if I refresh the page, by default, there should be wine trip that gets selected. So let's change that. So if we go back to the Cursor AI, we need to tell by default, the first organization ID needs to be set in the drop down. And this will set the first organization in the list to be displayed in the drop down. After this, let me quickly walk you through how the code is working. If I hit accept and go back here, if we refresh the page, you can see wine trip is selected, and then we can split it with the members accordingly. If I say cottage trip, then again, there are two members now, Kobe Bean and Kira Kulkarni. So our code for organizations and fetching members is working as intended. Now, if we quickly take a look at what's happening here, it's declared as not read at all. So we can just fix this, remove unused declaration. And what's happening here is we are using use user hook to check the existing logged in user. Then we are looking at use organization list to fetch the existing memberships. And then use organization is just to check if that specific organization is loaded or not. Now, if we scroll down, here we are looping through all the memberships and setting the groups accordingly. And then setting the first organization as default and fetching its members. Now, this specific code for fetching member, this is how it works. It tries to find the ID based on what's selected in the dropdown. And then towards the end, it's setting the member list as well so we can see it accordingly. And now if we scroll down, then we can also see what happens when the group changes. So this gets triggered whenever the dropdown changes, and then set the group to new organization ID, fetch the member, and so on. And if everything works as expected, we can also add an expense accordingly as well. Now let's add this expense to our database. Now, if you remember, I mentioned that we would be storing this in an expenses table, and we would be using a database called as NeonDb. Now, NeonDB is quite powerful. It's completely free to sign up, so definitely check that out. Once you're able to log in, and I already have an account, so I'm just gonna hit login, then you would enter in this dashboard. If you don't have a project already, create one. But once you do that, you can just go ahead and straight up create a new database. Now, if we create a new database here, then you can just name it Split AI app, for example, or whatever you want to call it. So I'm just going to call this Split AI app and hit create. The database has been created. We can go to the tables, and Split AI app does exist, but it does not have any tables. Then we're going to ask Cursor AI's help to generate the tables for us according to what we have in the expenses page. So if we go here, we have amount, description, group, split percentage, and split members with. So we are going to get Cursor AI to store this record in the database. So let's do that. So now let's head over to the composer, create new composer. And this is where we want to tell Cursor AI reference the NeonDB docs. So if you just look for NeonDB docs and look at the documentation for it, then we will see a documentation for Next.js. And on top, we can connect an application with Next.js, and this is the literal documentation for it. Now in this doc, we want to make sure we are installing the package. So let's head over to the terminal and paste this package. Let's restart our server. At the same time, we also need the database URL. We can also grab that by going to the dashboard and making sure a correct app is selected and copying the snippet here. Now let's head over to Cursor AI terminal. Now let's go to the end local file and paste the database URL that we copied. So if we take a look, let's just copy this and paste it. Now we have set up our NeonDB database. So now let's just feed this document to Cursor AI to to basically create the table for us. So now let's just go to the composer and let's just say refer the docs, new doc, paste this NeonDB docs for Next.js. Let's paste this. We're saying refer the docs and insert the expenses in the table. Give me the SQL create query for the table. I want the table fields to match the form fields and make sure that we are accounting for split percentage for members as well. So I'm also going to give it additional context. This expense page allows users to add expenses and select the member they are splitting the expenses with. Just giving more context so that it's able to understand what it needs to do. So now let's see what it does. We forgot to mention one thing, that we don't want two tables, we just want one. So let's just add that. We only want one table, and it definitely went for server actions, which is what we want as well. We only want one table expenses and not two. Alrighty, so now it has created the actions for it. So it has created a server action for add expense, which is pretty good. And then it is also calculating the amount for each member, and we have split amounts. And if you take a look at the page, then we have a toast for sending if the user hasn't been loaded. We parse all the values and then we set the values. Now it's always important to check what NeonDB is up to. So it is basically dispatching add expense with all this expense data. But what I don't see is the information about the members itself. So let's give the instructions for that. Make sure to add member info with their user ID in the table. As we want to add not just the calculation, but we also need to know how to retrieve the information as well. And lastly, we also want to make sure in NeonDB that it's using the Neon serverless driver compared to the other ones. So let's ask to do that. Use the Neon serverless driver. All right, so now if we look at actions, then it's using the Neon serverless driver and accessing the database URL. And if we take a look at the page, then it's selecting the members. And if we take a look at members, it's also adding the selected members as well, which is pretty cool. So if we take a look at the table for expenses, ID is serial primary key. So make sure to use UUID as ID, which auto increments. This way we don't have to manage any of the IDs. It automatically takes care of it for us. All right, so now it has this specific table. So let's just go ahead and create it. So now if we go to NeonDB, we can just head over to tables or a SQL editor, select new query and paste it. Now if we hit run, UUID generate does not exist. So if I copy this and say does not exist. So hopefully it tells us exactly what we can do for that. And is you adding a package for installing UUID, we don't want that. Don't use the UUID v4 package. Tell me in Postgres how to auto generate the ID and not use this function. Is there any other function in the create a SQL statement? And now it has given us exactly what we're looking for, which is gen random ID. So if I copy this, head on to the SQL editor, paste it, and hit run, it has definitely run successfully. If we go to expense, now you can see all the values: split with, created at, created by, description, group ID, and so on. Now let's accept the changes in page and actions. So we're going to accept here, and we're going to accept here, and let's see what happens. So if we go to, all right, and now if we go back to page, it is unable to find actions, and actions are in fact located here. Let's just move actions to the app folder and update it. There we go. All right, if we go back to the page, hit refresh, and now let's say I have $50 for candy. Let's select cottage trip, and 50% is a split with Kobe bean. If I hit save expense, there is an error. So let's take a look at why there's an error. So if we take a look here, it says rows is not iterable. So if we go back to the code, and if we go to actions, simply tell me if it is successful or not. I'm going to cancel chat because I selected the wrong one. And here I want to say actions is where I want it. Don't return rows, simply tell me if it's successful or not, because we don't care about rows at all. All we care about if it's successful or not, and throw an error if that's the case. All right, I'm gonna hit accept, save. All right, so now it did not work. So let's just see. Let's reapply the changes. Accept all. Let's reapply all because it did not work for some reason. All right, so now let's go back and try it out again. If I refresh the page one more time, 50, I've paid for candy at the cottage trip, 50% split, Kobe bean, and hit save expense. And there we go. Expense has been added. We see a toast message here. Now, if we go back to our Neon console and refresh, look at that. So even the first time, if it did not really work, it actually did work. So we have the split amount of 25, and just gonna delete the first one and keep the second one itself. So now it has also calculated how much this person owns because of the specific split percentage, for instance. All right, so now if we go back here, I want the toast message to appear on top with more friendly messages. So let's just tweak that as well. Let's go back here, go to actions, and let's open up a new composer altogether. And here, let's just select the page and say, make the toast messages more friendly and use emojis. Move the location of the toast to top right. So I'm gonna select toast and use toast wherever it is. So this way I don't want it to the bottom right, I want it to be at the top right. And now you can see that there are more emojis here. So things are looking good so far. Perfect. So I'm just gonna hit accept, close this. And if we add one more expense, 85, candy again, cottage trip, 50%, Kobe bean. The messages are friendly. Let's add and display all the groups on the specific page. And for this, we're just literally going to take a screenshot of your groups page, because we haven't done that in Claude. Go to Claude and paste it here. And we are going to say the same thing that we did earlier, which is that I want to build an app, and instead of same prompt, create the component for your groups page. Build an app called Splitwise, blah, 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 and then that's it. So as we do that, it's going to just look at this and then create the page for us. There we go. The page has been created. And let's copy this page, copy the contents. Let's cursor to do it. So create a /groups page with the code and paste it. All right. Your groups page is ready to go. It has also added the div as well. Accept. Perfect. So now if we go back to app groups page, it works. The typing is not done correctly, so we need to give those instructions as well. Add types for this. Perfect. Save it. Now here I'm just gonna press tab, or let's just say fix with AI, accept, and fixed it. Perfect. It got rid of the user button, which is not what we are looking for. let's just tell cursor, let's open up a new composer and just say add a new link for your groups. Don't remove existing code. Your groups has been added. Save. Go back to the app and you can see we have an app here with all your groups here too. And look at that, we have all these groups being created too, which is what we want. And create a group does not get linked there, so we can tweak that. So if we go to groups page, we can literally just say here link to / group and we can import this. Invalid link with a child, added that, we don't want it. So we can say invalid link with a child. That's the error we got, so we are gonna give it instructions to remove it. Keep using the link component. Perfect. So now let's hit save, go back, and if I click on create a new group, it goes back there. Perfect. So now we should get this information from Clerk. So now if we go back to the composer, let's create a new composer, and here let's say for the groups page, reference Clerk docs, and we already have that. We have the docs for several Clerk values, so we can just say organization docs and also code base to populate the list of organizations aka groups in the, there we go. So now it is literally populating the organization list. And again, organization list does not exist, user membership does. So since we know that, we can just say organization list does not exist, user memberships do. So now here it now has retrieved it, and you can see all the values have been updated. So let's just hit accept. So it's retrieving the values and showing it onto the page. So now if we go back, you can see we have wine trip with org admin. Now -admin does not really look good. We can format it to just admin. So let's look at group item and the role. And here we can say if it is org admin, then show admin, else member. Hit accept. Perfect. So now if we go back, we can see admin because we are the admins of the group. So now we also want this group to be clickable to go to individual groups because we already have that page. So let's make that clickable as well. So again, we can just say make the group item clickable, and it should go to /groups/group/ID, where ID is organization ID. Hit accept, and the fact that there is ID here, that means in the group item we need to add it. We want ID to be organization ID, and this is why these things need to be done in the composer. Organization ID, not name but ID. Perfect. Let's fix it in chat. Hit apply, accept, and we can just replace with group type. Perfect. So let's just say don't use a tag in link. Keep using link component. Perfect. All right, so now if we go back, if we click on wine trip, it takes us to /undefined, which is not what we want. We want the organization ID. So this is the time we go to the composer and say navigate the individual group items to organization ID. Because cursor composer is going to think ahead and like look at all the group IDs, and then there we go. This is what we need. So hit accept all, go back, and you can see organization ID is set and group wine trip got retrieved as well. Cottage trip, the same thing as well. So we have also navigated your groups page. Now, next feature is the actual group page itself. Now, this is a screenshot that we had given, and based on that, I have created in the Split app this specific page. This page. Now, we really don't want to just use the code from this and delete and remove and ask cursor to adjust, what we can do is, again, we can just take a screenshot of this page, go to Claude, just like we did earlier, create the screen for attached screenshot, and remember to use Next.js app router. As we hit enter, it's gonna create the screen in the Next.js app router and adding necessary fallback values. The spacing is a bit off. We can just say fix the padding within the cards. And now it is going to regenerate everything. The code for it didn't really work. It worked for expenses, not for balances. We can tweak that later in Cursor. All right, so now let's head back to Cursor AI. Let's close all of this. And now let's update the group ID page. Let's open up Cursor Composer. And here let's just say update the group ID page with the following design and hit submit. As you can see, it is literally just adjusting to that. And let's just hit accept. Go back here. So there is no avatar, for instance. So we can just ask cursor, don't use avatar, use a background color with the first and last name as initials. So it has created a function here for getting the initials and setting that. Because we don't need any avatar and images and whatnot. We just need simple, hit accept all, go back here. And now you can see that the records have been retrieved with balances and expenses with these cards and this specific trash icon as well, which doesn't really work, but it will work later. If I go to all groups, it still works. And cottage strip is the name of the group itself. So now we just need to get the balances and expenses from NeonDb. Let's replace the dummy balances and expenses with real data from the database. We already have information about the list of expenses, which is right here. And then we also have a list of balances, which is also in the split amount here. We can also do the math based on the split percentage here as well. So let's give AI the job to figure all of this out. We don't need to. Heading back to our code base, let's make sure we select the group ID page. Now we have the group ID page as well as the actions page. And we're going to give it this prompt, the database schema in the actions file. And let's just add actions here. And we already have information about the balances. Check the database schema in the actions file. And can you give me the list of expenses and balances and display them on the page and replace the dummy data? Now keep this in mind. Whenever we need to replace the dummy data, we also need to make sure that we are asking the AI to keep the existing information as well. Keep the existing code for organization name as well as the design name, ID, etc., as well as the design, because we don't want it to replace everything. So here it has, if you see in actions, and this is a suggested code and this is a diff. Let's move on to the suggested code tab. And here you can see it has retrieved the expenses as well as the balances, looped through all of them, and then returned it. If we go to the page, then you can see that it has retrieved the function here and keeping a track of states such as expenses, balances, and loading. Once it gets the expenses from get group expenses, it's getting the ID from the group ID page. So keeping the existing code as is, fetching the data, has replaced the dummy data. And you can see here we have balance.name, balance.owes, balance.amount.toFixed, and so on. So if there is balance.owes, this means that they owe me versus I owe them, for instance. And then we have rest of the content as well. Now clearly balance has not been typed, and that is why we are getting expense and ID and all of that. So let's also give it instructions. Type the balances and expenses in the page. We want to give it information to type everything so that we don't have to then figure out what the type of each one is. So again, now it has typed it. So hopefully now we won't see the errors that we were seeing earlier. There we go. It is now way better. So we are just going to accept this, go to actions and accept this as well. Now if we go to actions, again, it has not typed this as well. So let's just ask it to type the actions as well. So type the actions because it has not necessarily typed the actions either. So let's give it instructions to do the same. And now we see this error, expense.amount.toFix is not a function. Let's copy this and move back to the composer and say this. So don't use toFixed here. So now it's going to correct that and regenerated the code here. Let's hit accept, go back here. There we go. So now we see that there are two records. One is the specific user ID and the other user ID. And we have all the expenses such as laptop, food, and candy from the Neon console, which is this one. Now, if you see for the organization IDs that are same 1, 2, and 3, it is laptop, food, and candy, which is exactly the balances and expenses here. Now, we want to give instructions that don't show. We want to give it instructions. We want to give it instructions to not use user ID, but to get the name in split_with itself. So we have split_with column. So we can ask Cursor AI to get it. So you can get the name from split_with column already. So use that instead of user ID. To get the name of the user itself, you can check that from Clerk and check that the Clerk user matches the ID logic for balances name too. Because right now we literally have this user ID. If this specific user, that is me, if I'm logged in, I already have a user ID already. First of all, don't show me. But second of all, if my ID is used, then you could just use my name from Clerk itself, because that my name is not here in the database. So let's see what it gave us. So now it has tried to retrieve that information. And now if we hit accept, if we go back and if we refresh the page, it has tried to use user ID from auth. You want to say don't use user ID from auth. You can reference, and this is where the docs come in play. The docs for Clerk, which is going to be these docs, the use user docs. We want to feed this information and get the information there. So we can say Clerk user docs. There we go. And they're saying refer that to get the user name. And now it's going to retrieve the username instead of relying on the user ID. Now you can see it has retrieved the specific hook. User memberships has also been added here, or rather is loaded has been renamed to org loaded, and is loaded has been renamed to user loaded because they are the same variable names. And then if ID and user exists, then only we are retrieving any of this information. So now that we have user, let's accept this, go back to actions, and now it has changed this information here. If ID is equal to user ID and username is from this information. Now if we go back and refresh the page, you can see Kobe Bean owes you $110. Balances got displayed and I owe this much. Now, really, if it's me, then it should not be displayed here. So we can say ignore it. So we can say don't show my balances, or don't show the current user balances, that is in balances. Only show what the others owe. And now it's going to modify the function to only show what others owe us. So if we hit accept here, go back, refresh the page, accept here, go back, refresh the page. We can say remove logic for how much I owe them in balances. And this is going to remove the logic for how much others owe, or I owe others, but it's only going to show how much they owe me. So we can just say save, go back here, and now you can see Kobe Bean owes me $110 with all these expenses. We still haven't shown the user ID information from expenses, so let's tweak that. In expenses, you can get the name of the user from split underscore with column. It has, and we can see here, it has the name object. So hopefully it can figure it out, because we have guided it a bit more, that it can just get that information from there. It doesn't need to do any fancy logic here to tweak any information, just get that information directly from the database because we already have it. All right, so now let's just hit accept all, go back here and refresh the page. And now it says unknown, but split with Kobe bean. So why is it saying unknown? So let's take a look at the logic for that. So it's going to find the ID with the created by. If m.id is equal to expense.created by, then it's going to get dot name, otherwise unknown. So that is, it's this specific logic that it's unable to figure out. So we can just get rid of this information because split with is already displayed here. So we can just say, there we go. Now if we go back, we see $100. But what we truly want is $100, and Kobe bean should be on the same page. And we just need to show the split percentage. We can copy this and say, this is how you display the data. Now it's regenerating the UI code for it. You can just say, instead of expense.create by, you can use expense.split underscore with to get the name as you did before. So now it's going to get the creator's name as we did before and replace that. There we go. So now if we go back, we can see that the specific expense has been displayed with the dollar, and who are we splitting with split percentage type 50%. And this clearly show how much other people owe us as well. Now let's implement the deleting an expense functionality. So if we go back here, let's just again open up Composer, create new, and paste this. Integrate the ability to delete an expense by clicking on the trash icon. Let's select actions and hit submit. This should just integrate the entire ability to delete from expenses based on the ID. And it's also going to ask us, hey, are you sure you want to do this? Hit accept, go back and delete candy, for instance, and hit OK. Candy is gone. Now if we go back here and refresh the page, candy is gone as well. There were two candies here. So laptop, food and candy is gone. If I delete on laptop, it's gone. If I go back here, we should only see two records. So delete functionality has also been implemented. I cannot believe how easy this was. Now we only want the admins to be able to delete any expenses and no one else. This way we can implement the role-based auth functionality as well. If we take a look at the groups page, that's where we have already implemented. We have the role where we know if the user is admin or not. So what we can ask Cursor AI to do is refer, and let's refer the file for the groups page where we have implemented admin role functionality, and implement the same and only have the ability to delete the expense if role is admin. So we want to be in the file for group ID page, and we are saying please refer file for groups page and only have the ability to in the, and this is where we are adding the file group ID page. So hopefully Cursor AI is able to learn how that's done and then implement the same inside of this page. So now you can see here it has organization.role is org.admin. That's the case, your role is admin or not, and then only show the trash. We're just going to accept that for now. And in Vans Joy Concert, my role is member, so I don't see anything. But if I go to wine trip, there are no expenses. If I go to cottage trip, my role is admin, and I see the delete icon. So we have implemented the delete functionality, the role-based auth as well. So in this case, we really don't want if you take a look. So we have implemented the role-based auth functionality where only the admins will be able to delete the expense and no one else, which is pretty cool. I had already created this group where my role was a member and I don't see the delete icon here. So that's exactly what we are looking for. Now you can take this application further and build whatever you like, but this is the base of the application and how role-based auth with Clerk and how Cursor AI can be used. If you enjoyed this specific video, then definitely check out the AI SaaS video where I teach you how you can build a SaaS that utilizes AI and sell it as well. I take you all the way from creating a landing page to also integrating payments using Stripe. So definitely check out that video as next steps. The other video that you should also check out, which also utilizes AI, is called as the Todoist clone, which will teach you how you can build your application, which will teach you how you can build the Todoist clone application and also integrate AI. If you want to suggest any missing to-dos or any missing sub to-dos, then that is a really great tutorial to check out as well. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.